TV Power Talk. Kindly subscribe, share, promote Nota TV for protecting democratic values. COVID-19 affected total unorganized sector of India, particularly migrant labor. They don't know where they are walking. They don't know where is their destination, but we will find oftenly thousands of the people walking on the national highways. This is a 1,000 million question before the government of India. How many migrant laborers are there in India? Unfortunately, government of India don't have particular and concrete data. This is the unfortunate. One RTI activist and anti-corruption whistleblower, Mr. Venkatesh Nayak from Delhi, filed the RTI petition before the government of India asking available data of migrant laborers. Unfortunately, government of India, they failed to collect the comprehensive data of the migrated labor, and state-wise they given very funny figures. Today in Nota TV Power Talk, we are discussing with Mr. Venkatesh Nayak, RTI activist from New Delhi. Mr. Venkatesh Nayak, thanks for Nota TV Power Talk. Welcome to Nota TV Power Talk.
Thank you. Thank you.
Venkatesh Nayak, coronavirus affected all sectors, not only single XYZ sector. Migrant laborers are the more sufferers, but because they don't have any shelter, they don't have any food, they don't have any legal right over the rim. Can you explain in your own words what type of problems they face with migrant laborers?
Yes. I mean, to put it in a dramatic way, it was literally like the skies falling down on the heads of migrant workers. They were under severe threat of contracting the coronavirus infection. So that was one immediate threat. Then because of the lockdown, the economy shut down. Different kinds of activities in which the migrant laborers were employed, those came to a standstill. So they were not gainfully employed anymore. In the initial phase of the lockdown, I'm not sure how many of them even got their salaries paid by their employers. Many of them do not get paid salaries regularly. This is an ongoing problem for several decades. They will hire you, they will make you work worse than pack animals, but then they will not pay you your wages on time. So back wages had not been received. Future job was not clear. Whatever little savings that they had, they were making use of to contact their family members or to pay rents to the landlords and buy food in order to survive. Very soon that money started running out. Landlords started throwing them away from the rented accommodation, saying, if you don't pay rent, you can't stay here. They don't have a job from which they can earn money to pay the rent. So what will these people do? And then realizing that the choice was between walking back home in the searing hot Indian summer, where temperatures range between 40 to 47 degrees during the peak summer. This was peak summer period, which had started in April. The choice was between staying back and dying of starvation and hunger, or risking the long march back home. Some walked. The more fortunate ones probably walked for a few hundred kilometers. The more unfortunate ones had to walk for more than 1,500 kilometers. There was even that story of one very young teenage girl who bought a bicycle by borrowing money from friends, took her ailing father, traveled more than 1,250 kilometers all the way to Bihar cycling. And then that is not all. The government in most places, they treated the migrant laborers who were still in the cities where they had been working as if they were untouchables, by rounding them up and putting them away in isolation centers, which were open either in schools or in stadiums like in Delhi. And those people were not being given food regularly or even water. You have seen those videos of how in one school where people had been quarantined in Uttar Pradesh, the people responsible for ensuring that they were fed and they were provided with drinking water, they were throwing biscuit packets and water bottles outside the gate, which these people could not open because they were locked from outside.
Mr. Venkatesh, what was your RTI application before the Central Information Commission?
During the second week of April, my director of Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, where I work in New Delhi, is a very well-known media personality also, Mr. Sanjay Hazarika. He sent me a demi-official letter that had been issued by the Chief Labour Commissioner under the Ministry of Labour and Employment, Government of India, to about 20 regional heads who are stationed across the country in different places to collect individual migrant laborer data and send it within 3 days. The DO was dated 8th April. By 11th April, data had to be collected and sent back to the Chief Labour Commissioner about workers who were migrant workers who were stranded in government-run relief camps, in work sites that had been working for their employers, or where they were clustered in different places like along highways or near temples or in schools. And this circular was about collecting information not only about blue-collared migrant workers, like those who are working in the agriculture sector or in the small-scale industries or in the construction work industry, but it also included white-collared employees, like those who are engaged in the financial services sector, banking, information technology, all of that. So everybody was covered by this circular. So that data was supposed to be collected. So I waited for about 2 weeks to see if any data at all was being made public by the government of India based on this enumeration exercise. Nothing came forward. And in fact, in the Supreme Court, where a case had been filed to draw the attention of the Honorable Supreme Court of India to the plight of migrant workers, the government counsel said that there wasn't a single migrant worker who was walking back home on the roads, which was a complete lie, because media had been coming out with report after report of how men, women, and children were walking back home under the horrible Indian summer, temperatures. So that is what prompted me to ask information about all these categories of stranded migrant workers, those living in relief shelters run by government and NGOs, those in workplaces of their employers, and those who are in clustered relief camps managing on their own. So I said, please provide access to this data, whatever you have collected so far. I didn't ask the data for myself. I said, make this data publicly accessible to people on your website.
Yeah. Mr. Venkatesh Naik, whatever your question data is in my hand, that is reflecting in the Ministry of Labour website also.
Yes.
The figures are very poor. In 29 states and 6 or 7 union territories, only 26 lakhs around migrant labor's data they collected. But from morning onwards, I spoke to several NGO activists. They are saying that more than 11 crores migrant laborers are there in India.
Absolutely right.
Then how to legalize the rights of the migrant workers?
You have raised a very pertinent question. You see, when I did not get the information, I approached the Central Information Commission with a complaint saying this data should be made public. They gave this case an out-of-turn hearing and issued an advisory to the Chief Labour Commissioner's office saying make the information, whatever you have, publicly available within 1 week. Now, what the CLC's office has done is it has simply dumped some information which has not been parsed through, which has not been segregated, which has not been given district-wise or category-wise or sector-wise, and they've just dumped some information on their website. I'm hoping there would be much more. So the 26 lakh figure is a very minuscule proportion of the actual number of migrant workers around the country. But we should also be very careful about one thing. The figure of 11 crores which you are citing is probably much closer to the realistic estimate than what Government of India is saying, because their calculation of the size of the migrant worker population is about 4.5 crores based on the 2011 census, which is 9 years old. So, and in Parliament, you would be very surprised to know that within less than 24 hours before, the countrywide lockdown was announced by the Honorable Prime Minister of India. That was on the 25th. 23rd of March, on the last day of the Parliament session, Rajya Sabha was told government does not have data about migrant workers. Instead, their estimation is that there might be 10 crore migrant workers across the country. Now, 10 crore migrant workers would also include people like me. You see, I am from Karnataka, but I have been living in Delhi for the last 30 years. First 10 years I spent as a student. But now I am
migration cannot be considered as a migrant worker. You are the
the CLC circular includes skilled workers also. It is not just blue collar workers. So if you look at the attachment that is there in the data collection template, they are including skilled workers also, and not just semi-skilled or unskilled people. So being a migrant worker myself, I realized that this is information that has to be in the public domain. That is why this intervention was done. But now when I look at the data, what it tells me is that of course there might be between 11, even some experts have said there might be 14 crore migrant workers. Not all of them might be stranded. Some might be living, for long periods of time in the city or town of their choice, and they may not have an urgency of returning back home. So what the number of people who have actually gone back home seem to be the floating migrant population, the seasonal migrant worker population, which visits places of employment on specific seasons. It could be the harvest season, it could be the construction season, several factors could be there. So out of that, by the government's own data, which was presented late last week around Thursday or Friday, about 91 lakh migrant workers had gone back either on trains or buses organized by the state governments. So this 26 lakh figure is absolutely
How it can be?
Exactly.
Unbelievable.
So my inference is that the data collection exercise that the CLC's office has initiated, A, is incomplete, or B, the data that they have put up on their website is incomplete, and probably more data sets are coming forward. But one ray of hope in all of this is the announcement by the government of India that they will create a migrant workers portal, and they will keep up to date data available henceforth, because that is how the economy is going to ensure that these migrant workers have gainful employment, and these gainfully employed migrant workers are going to ensure that the Indian economy does not collapse. You see, it is a codependency situation that has been created. The economy is dependent on them, they are dependent on the economy as well. So therefore, that creation of the new information management systems is a very welcome idea. But I completely agree with you that the data that has been provided right now on the CLC website, I'm hoping they will update it further. It is not even a dated publication, unfortunately. That is hopelessly inadequate. I'm considering the possibility of approaching the commission once again with another complaint about inadequate compliance. You quite rightly said, migrant workers' rights cannot be protected, it cannot be provided for, it cannot be promoted, it cannot be fulfilled until and unless you know with some degree of accuracy how many such people are there who should be provided. So getting information about them is the first requirement.
Mr. Nayak, this is the very big challenge before the government of India, where they are thinking about the CCA, NRP, and citizenship laws, and several.
Yes.
Whether these people are citizens of India or not, how we have to identify them?
No, I think that is a very valid question you are taking, and I'm just hoping to the high heavens that a large number of these migrant workers at least have their electoral voter cards, which will prove their citizenship. You see, as you would write,
Aadhaar, electoral voter card, and there is a lot of tracking mechanism. Even in Uttar Pradesh, government of Uttar Pradesh is providing tracking system for the cows. Why not for the migrant labor?
Absolutely right. You see, this tracking system for migrant workers was actually established as a statutory requirement in 1979, 41 years ago, when Parliament passed the Interstate Migrant Workmen Conditions of Service and Employment Regulation Act. Under that, whenever a contractor or an employer decides to hire more than five or more than five laborers from one state to work in another state, they have to be registered in their domicile state and they have to be registered in the state of their employment. But in most cases, as I have heard from experts, barring a few exceptions, this requirement is simply not complied with. This is part number one of the problem. The second part of the problem is, what if migrant workers are going from their villages and small towns to the bigger cities or other larger towns in search of employment opportunities completely on their own? Then there is no requirement for registering these kinds of migrant workers, because like you quite rightly said in your opening remarks, these migrant workers form the bulk of the informal economy that is currently at the foundation of the Indian economy. So therefore, identifying them in terms of names and numbers is simply next to impossible. However, at the same time, this is not an exercise that only the government of India can do on its own, because this is also a responsibility of the state governments, where they are they have their home bases. It is also the responsibility of the district administration, where they actually have their families living, or in the villages where they are living. So it is a hierarchy of responsibility right from the Gram Panchayat up to the Union Ministry of Labour and Employment to ensure that there is credible database available about migrant workers and about their movements. Now, when I say there should be database about their identities and movements, I am not for one moment saying it should be used for the purpose of conducting surveillance on these people. No, that would be a violation of their right to privacy and the right to lead a life of dignity. What I'm saying is, you should have data about the movement of migrant laborers, so that whenever these kinds of abnormal and excessive circumstances start occurring, it could be a natural calamity tomorrow, then you should have some credible data on the basis of which government can take action to provide relief and rehabilitation to these people. So information is absolutely crucial for any policy prescriptions, for any governmental action with regard to ensuring the life of dignity for these migrant workers. Because after all, they are there in every segment of our economy. They are there from agricultural sector, mining sector, in construction industry sector, in the factories they are there. They are even there in the IT-enabled services sector, everywhere. Most of the people in government of India are people who have migrated in search of jobs. So the government of India, the officers in the and look at the ministers. How many of these ministers are actually from Delhi? They are not residents of Delhi. They are from all over the country. They are themselves migrant work. People who have migrated to Delhi because they have been elected as members of parliament and because they have a job to perform as ministers. Even the Honorable Prime Minister of India, the Honorable President of India, the Honorable Vice President of India are all migrants, but they have their workplace in Delhi. So I think sensitivity to this issue has to happen at that highest level.
Central government and state governments started blame game. You are the responsible for the migrant laborers and you are the responsible for the migrant labor.
Yes.
I am asking the question, who are the responsible for the rescue, rehabilitation and restoration of the migrant laborers?
You see, ultimately, the responsibility is a multi-layered responsibility. If you go strictly speaking by the Interstate Migrant Workmen's Regulation of Service Conditions and Employment Act, the first and foremost responsibility is that of the contractors who hire them. The next layer of responsibility is that of the employers who employ them. The next responsibility is that of the labor departments in the concerned states who have to keep track of who these people are, where they are there. They have to issue passbooks. Their living conditions have to be ascertained by the frequent visits to their places of work or their places of residence by the labor inspectors. Then the next layer is that of the state government, which has to keep all of this data. And at the highest level, it is the responsibility of this union government to ensure that the law passed by parliament is actually complied with every day. If none of these things in the executive work, then that is where the honorable courts have to step in. Thankfully, the high courts have done a commendable job by taking into consideration the plight of the migrant workers in Odisha, in Andhra Pradesh, in Telangana, in Madras, in Karnataka, in so many other places, in Delhi. High courts have been seized of the problem. Unfortunately, the highest level of judicial authority in this country, the Supreme Court, actually did not take a very strong step to start with. They did not deal with the petition that was lying in front of them with giving it serious consideration. But thankfully, good wisdom has dawned, all white late, and now they've suo moto taken up this issue for examining the adequacy of actions taken by the central and state governments. This is the time, like you quite rightly said, the state and the central government should not be blaming each other. Instead, they should be sitting together. Today, it is possible, thanks to technology, that you can talk to each other without meeting face to face. You can have Zoom meetings, you can have WebEx meetings, you can have WhatsApp calls where you can talk to each other, and you find solutions to this problem. You don't need to, people in government will not be serving anybody. They will not be helping a single migrant worker by simply blaming one another. What you need to do is come up with constructive out-of-box solutions to ensure that these people who have suffered already so much should not be made to suffer even more.
Mr. Naik, I traveled across several other states also during the lockdown to cover this different stories. I saw thousands of the people walking on the national highways.
Yes.
Government of India, how much they showed interest to bring back Vande Bharat mission from other side,
yes,
who are studying, who are engaging, and who are working in a different countries. Why they neglected migrated labor? This is the primary responsibility. Why? Because the problem is in front of you. You can create some alternative mechanisms, and who are responsible for this?
No, I think you raised a very valid question, and that strikes at the very root of this problem, and that is at the heart of that problem is the class bias. So the amount of resources that can be put in to bring in the better off Indian nationals who are working in foreign countries, the same level of concern and the same level of preparations, unfortunately, are not being put in for people who earn a livelihood by working very long hours, and even then they get paid a pittance, if at all that they get paid. I'll give an example. How was it decided that Shramik trains, of course, it's a good thing that Shramik trains were run, but could you not spare air-conditioned coaches for these people to travel? Did you have to make them travel in this searing heat of?
I'll object you,
Yeah.
Venkatesh Nayak, but there is no food, water inside the train to drink. You forget about the ACs, but they don't have minimum needs also. There is a
No, I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. You see, the reason why I mentioned air-conditioned coaches is simply because Railways is now collecting data about migrant workers who died traveling in their trains. Perhaps some of those deaths could have been avoided if the trains had better facilities, number one. And in the better facilities category, like you quite rightly pointed out, food, water, and medical assistance should have been provided. We have seen videos of how there was fracas in many railway stations where there was no mechanism for distributing the cartloads of bottles of mineral water that were kept there. Unlike at the railway stations of origin in Maharashtra or in Kerala, where the local governments actually put in the effort to provide them with meals and water that could sustain them for 1 or 1.5 days. But the train journeys were much longer. In between the stations, there was no arrangement made. This could all have been done with adequate planning. Today, India is in a situation where we have bumper harvest even despite the lockdown period. It is not for the first time that meal serving centers have been established around the country. Arrangements could have been made to link them up. We have a midday meal scheme that is going on, which unfortunately right now is closed because schools are closed. So the same mechanism could have been used to ensure that at those very points where the trains would stop during the journey, midday meal providers could have been employed to make use of the food grains and serve at least some decent food to these people, hot cooked food. None of these things were thought through. So that is where the difficulty arises in the process of decision making. If everything gets centralized, then these things cannot be thought through, because this has to be a decentralized process of decision making, starting from the topmost level down to the district administration level, and similarly at the different levels of hierarchy within the railways administration. If adequate instructions had gone down, if adequate responsibilities had been identified as to who would be responsible in which station to ensure that cooked food and water would be made available to these passengers, things perhaps could have been done better. That video of that young woman who died on the train and then her body was lying on the platform, and the poor 1.5-month-old child did not know that the mother had died and was trying to wake up the mother. She was not even able to speak. I mean, that will actually put a stake into any right thinking person's heart to see that kind of suffering, which unfortunately the kid is actually, it's a good thing the kid is completely oblivious, otherwise probably the kid would have died of some shock. Now this shows a complete failure as far as the planning capacities of our own administration at different levels are concerned. This should have been, strictly speaking, the government's responsibility at all levels.
Mr. Venkatesh Nayak, what is your follow-up action on this subject?
Yes. Now you see, I have actually written to several people who are working at different levels, for improving the condition and the status, and the well-being of migrant workers. I've shared information about this whole intervention of mine. I have been responding frequently to media persons who are reporting on this story. So my objective at one level is to get more and more people to come together to actually, like today you sent me a list of policy recommendations that have been put together by an NGO for government to deal with the problem of the migrant worker situation. So it's important that organizations in the civil society sector, in the private sector, particularly the private sector, which actually benefits and which makes money out of the hard labor of these workers, they have to come together to identify ways and means of ensuring that these people get a much better deal in life. As far as my own individual initiative is concerned, I am hoping to go back to the Information Commission inadequacy, compliance complaint, and request the Commission to consider the matter further, reinstate the case, and then go into greater depths of this particular problem in terms of information availability, and give further directions to the Chief Labour Commissioner as to how much more information they can require to put in the public domain. This is a very fluid situation, as you recognize. The data that you have today about migrant workers would have changed tomorrow because of the frequent movement of these people from one place to another. So therefore, this data has to be constantly updated, and that is an ongoing exercise. So my objective would be to move the Central Information Commission once again to once again issue advisories of a much more detailed nature to the Chief Labour Commissioner and the Ministry of Labour and Employment to make data available, collect data, credible data available in real time, make it available in the public domain, and work with people to who are already in the field of migrant workers' rights to ensure that these migrant workers and their families are not put to any further hardship.
Mr. Venkatesh Naik, all the best for your follow-up action and future course of the agitation. This is very bad because we are the country where we are planning for these several inventions and several a lot of things we are planning, but we don't have the data who are working with us, and we don't have the data who are migrated and who are engaged in the organized sector and who are engaged in the unorganized sector. COVID-19 impact is very bad on the migrant workers. I hope the best all central and state government to initiate proper actions for implementation of the labor laws in India. Even I appeal to the NGOs to work with honestly to the targeted groups and stakeholders. Mr. Venkatesh Naik, thanks for joining with Nota TV Power Talk and signing up Silveri Srishalam for Nota TV. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.